Nari pressed her face against the transport ship's window and gasped. The Galactic Scholastic Institute stretched before her like something from a dream. The massive structure looked like a crystal mountain floating in space, its surfaces glowing with soft blue light. Towers twisted upward in impossible spirals while bridges of pure energy connected different sections. She had never seen anything so beautiful or so terrifying. "First time seeing real architecture?" asked the pilot, a green-skinned Zellarian with 4 eyes. "Most primitive species react that way." Nari felt her cheeks burn. She was already being called primitive and she had not even arrived yet. The pilot was not trying to be mean. To him, she really was primitive. Humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Other species had been exploring the galaxy for thousands of years. The transport ship glided through a shimmering barrier that surrounded the school. Nari watched the barrier ripple like water as they passed through. On Earth, their most advanced shields were solid metal plates. Here they used energy fields she could not even understand. "Atmospheric adjustment complete," announced the ship's computer. "Passenger Nari Kim, please prepare for docking." Nari grabbed her single bag and checked her translation device one more time. The small earpiece would let her understand any alien language, but she still worried about making mistakes. She had studied basic galactic customs for months, but knowing facts from books was different from living them. The docking bay was enormous. Ships from dozens of different worlds sat in perfect rows. Some looked like sleek metal fish. Others resembled floating crystals, and a few defied any shape she could describe. Creatures of all sizes and colors walked between the ships. Some had wings, others had multiple arms, and many looked nothing like any Earth animal she had ever seen. A tall figure approached her. The being looked almost human except for silver skin and eyes that glowed like stars. "Nari Kim from Earth?" the figure asked in perfect English. "Yes, that's me," Nari replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I am Professor Yun, your academic advisor. Welcome to the Galactic Scholastic Institute." Professor Yun led her through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls showed moving pictures of different planets and star systems. Students of various species walked past them, talking in languages that sounded like music, clicking sounds, and electronic beeps. Nari noticed that many of them stared at her as she passed. "Is it true that humans can only live for about 80 years?" asked a student with blue fur and 6 arms. He was walking backwards while talking to his friends, apparently able to see behind himself somehow. "I heard they still use primitive writing systems," said another student who looked like a walking tree, "instead of direct neural transfer. They probably cannot even process quantum mathematics," added a third student, whose body seemed to be made of liquid metal. Nari pretended not to hear them, but Professor Yun noticed her discomfort. "Ignore them," he said quietly. "They are curious about you. Most have never seen a human before." They entered an elevator that moved sideways, upward, and in directions Nari could not name. The gravity seemed to shift with each movement, but somehow she never felt dizzy or sick. "How does this work?" she asked. "Gravitational manipulation," Professor Yun explained. "Basic technology. Most species develop it within their first 1,000 years of space travel." Most species. Nari realized how far behind humans really were. The elevator opened to reveal a circular room with windows showing space in all directions. Dozens of alien students were gathered around tables, eating foods that glowed, steamed, or moved on their own. The cafeteria smells were unlike anything on Earth, some sweet like flowers, others sharp like metal, and many she could not identify at all. "This is where you will eat your meals," Professor Yun said. "The food processors can create anything your species needs for nutrition." They walked through the cafeteria toward another corridor. Nari noticed that conversation stopped as she passed. Some students whispered excitedly to each other. Others just stared with expressions she could not read on their alien faces. "Why am I really here?" Nari asked suddenly. "I mean, I know I was accepted, but why would the most advanced school in the galaxy want a human student?" Professor Yun was quiet for a moment. "That is a good question," he said finally. "The Galactic Council debated your admission for months. Some thought it was too dangerous. Others thought it was necessary." "Dangerous?" Nari stopped walking. "How am I dangerous?" "You think differently than we do," Professor Yun said. "Sometimes different thinking can be more powerful than advanced technology." They continued walking through corridors filled with impossible technology. Lights that followed students around corners. Walls that showed information when touched. floors that moved people faster than walking. Everything was so advanced that Nari felt like a cave person visiting a modern city. Finally, they reached Dormitory Wing 7. Professor Yun stopped in front of a door that recognized him and slid open silently. "This is your room," he said. "You will share it with Kale, a student from the Vorthok system." The room was larger than Nari's entire bedroom back on Earth. One side had furniture sized for humans, a bed, desk and chair that looked comfortable and familiar. The other side had furniture she could not identify, built for someone much larger than herself. "Kyle is attending advanced physics class," Professor Yun explained. "You will meet him later. Classes begin tomorrow at the 7th tone. Your schedule is on the desk display." After Professor Yun left, Nari sat on her new bed and looked around the room. Through the window, she could see dozens of different star systems. Each point of light represented worlds with civilizations that had been exploring space since before humans discovered fire. She opened her bag and pulled out the few things she had brought from Earth: a photo of her family, a small plant in a pot, a book of human poetry. Everything looked so simple and primitive compared to the technology around her. Her door chimed and slid open. A massive figure walked in, easily 7 feet tall with 6 arms and skin that shifted color from blue to purple to green. This had to be Kale. "So you are the human," Kale said in a voice like distant thunder. His translation was perfect, but Nari could hear the original language underneath, a series of clicks and musical tones. "I thought you would be smaller. I thought you would be different," Nari replied honestly. Kale's skin shifted to a brighter blue, which she hoped meant he was amused rather than angry. "I have been studying your species," he said. "Very interesting. You have no natural armor, no enhanced senses, no ability to survive in space, and you live for such a short time. Yet your species conquered your entire planet." "We are good at working together," Nari said. "So are many species," Kale replied. "But most do it through shared consciousness or genetic programming. Humans choose to cooperate even though you could choose not to. Very strange." Kale began arranging his belongings on his side of the room. His possessions were mostly small devices that projected holographic displays when activated. Everything was efficient and advanced. "Tomorrow you will attend your first classes," Kale said. "I should warn you. The instructors do not lower their standards for primitive species. If you cannot keep up, you will be removed from the program." "I will keep up," Nari said with more confidence than she felt. Kale's skin shifted through several colors she had not seen before. "We shall see," he said. "Many species have tried to join galactic civilization before they were ready. Most failed." As night fell, or what counted as night in a space station, Nari lay in her bed looking out at the stars. Somewhere among those lights was Earth, with her family and friends living their normal human lives. Here she was, surrounded by technology she could barely understand, preparing to attend classes with beings who considered her species barely intelligent. But she was here for a reason. The galaxy was watching her, waiting to see what a human could do when given the same opportunities as advanced species. Tomorrow she would start proving that humans belonged among the stars. She fell asleep planning how to show them that sometimes being different was exactly what the galaxy needed. Nari woke up to the sound of musical tones filling the room. The 7th tone, she remembered. Time for classes to begin. Kale was already gone, leaving behind only a faint smell like ocean water mixed with electricity. She dressed quickly in the standard school uniform, a gray jumpsuit that adjusted itself to fit her perfectly. The fabric felt strange against her skin, almost alive. When she looked in the mirror, information appeared on the surface showing her schedule. The weather on 17 different planets, and something called her academic probability rating, which sat at a discouraging 12%. The corridors were full of students moving toward their first classes. Nari followed the glowing path on the floor that led to advanced mathematics, trying not to stare at her classmates. A group of crystalline beings floated past her, communicating through flashing lights. Twin creatures who seemed to share one mind walked in perfect step. A student who looked like living smoke drifted overhead. The mathematics classroom was a sphere with no clear floor or ceiling. Students sat on surfaces that oriented themselves to each person's preferred direction. Nari found herself sitting upright while a squid-like student hung upside down nearby, and several others floated in zero gravity. Professor HFY materialized at the center of the room. He was tall and thin with skin like polished metal and eyes that glowed red. "Today we will solve basic stellar formation equations," he announced. "These should be simple for any civilized mind." Equations appeared in the air around them, not written on any surface but floating as three-dimensional mathematical structures that shifted and changed. Nari blinked, trying to understand what she was seeing. The math looked familiar at first, but then symbols appeared that she had never seen before. Her classmates began working immediately. A blue-skinned student named Tai-Ho waved his hand and the equations rearranged themselves into new patterns. Others simply stared at the floating math, and Nari could see the numbers changing as they thought about them. "Miss Nari," Professor Hexaval's voice cut through her concentration. "Perhaps you could demonstrate human mathematical ability for the class." All eyes turned to her. Nari felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I need to write it down," she said quietly. The classroom fell silent except for a few sounds that might have been alien laughter. "Write it down?" Professor Hexaval repeated. "You mean with primitive symbols on a physical surface?" "Yes, sir," Nari said, trying to keep her voice steady. Professor Hexaval gestured and a flat screen appeared in front of her with something that looked like a stylus. "Very well. Show us how humans solve problems." Nari took the stylus and began writing out the equations the way she had learned in school on Earth. She wrote numbers and symbols in neat rows, showing each step of her work. It felt painfully slow compared to what her classmates were doing, but it was the only way she knew how to think through the problem. As she worked, she could hear whispers around her. "Look how slowly it processes information. Those symbols are so primitive. This is embarrassing." But Nari kept writing. Step by step, she worked through the mathematics. It took her 20 minutes to reach an answer that her classmates had found in seconds. "Finished," she said finally. Professor Hexval examined her work. His red eyes flickered as he read through her calculations. "The answer is correct," he said, sounding surprised. "However, your method is incredibly inefficient. Any civilized species would solve this through direct neural calculation." "But I can see every step," Nari said. "If I made a mistake, I could find it and fix it." "Mistakes?" Professor Hexaval's metallic skin shifted color slightly. "Advanced minds do not make mistakes in basic calculations." The class moved on to more complex problems. Nari fell further and further behind. While her classmates solved equations by thinking about them, she had to write out dozens of steps for each problem. By the end of class, she had completed 2 problems while everyone else had finished 15. Her next class was quantum physics. The instructor, Dr. Mintar, was a floating blob of energy who communicated through colored lights. The translation device in Nari's ear converted the lights into words, but the delay made it hard to follow the rapid explanations. "Quantum states are obvious to any developed consciousness," Dr. Mintar pulsed in bright yellow. "You simply observe the particle and collapse the wave function through mental interaction." Nari raised her hand. "How do you observe something that small?" The lights around Dr. Mintar flickered in what seemed like confusion. "You extend your consciousness to the quantum level. This is basic education for most species. Humans can't do that," Nari said. "Then how do you study quantum mechanics?" asked a student who looked like a walking tree made of silver metal. "We use instruments. Machines that can detect particles and measure them." The classroom filled with sounds that her translator turned into laughter. "Machines?" the tree student said. "You need external devices to perceive reality?" Nari felt her face burning with embarrassment, but she tried to explain. "We build tools to help us see things we cannot see naturally. Telescopes for distant stars, microscopes for small things, computers to help us calculate." "How primitive," whispered a student with 6 arms and crystal eyes. The day continued with similar experiences in stellar engineering while her classmates manipulated holographic star systems with their minds. Nari had to use clumsy hand controls that felt like children's toys. In galactic history, other students absorbed centuries of information in minutes, while Nari took notes by hand in a notebook she had brought from Earth. Lunch was almost worse than classes. The cafeteria had food from hundreds of worlds, but Nari could only eat things that would not poison her human biology. She sat alone at a table, eating something that tasted like chicken but glowed purple. While alien students whispered about her at nearby tables, I heard it took her 20 minutes to solve a basic equation. The professors are embarrassed to have her in class. Why did they even let a human come here? Tai-Ho, the crystal-skinned student from her math class, approached her table. May I sit? He asked politely. Nari nodded, grateful for any company. I have been studying human culture, Tejo said. Very interesting. You create art, music, stories. Most species stop doing these things once they develop advanced consciousness. Why would you stop making art? Nari asked. When you can experience pure mathematical beauty directly through neural interface, primitive sensory art seems unnecessary, Tejo explained. But humans continue creating even though you have limited sensory input. Curious. Maybe we create things because our senses are limited, Nari said. We have to use imagination to fill in what we cannot see or hear. Tejo's crystal skin shifted from blue to green. Imagination. Yes, I have read about this concept. Humans can think about things that do not exist. Can't you? Why would we want to? Tejo seemed genuinely confused. Reality provides all the complexity and beauty we need to study. After lunch, Nari had stellar engineering with Dr. Shin, an elderly humanoid with gray skin and kind eyes. The class was working on designing systems to harvest energy from dying stars. Dr. Shin displayed a holographic star system in the center of the room. The star is entering its final phase, she explained. It will collapse within 50 years. Your task is to design a method to extract useful energy before the collapse. Students immediately began creating complex three-dimensional designs that floated around the room. Their solutions involved massive machines with names Nari could not pronounce, using technologies she had never heard of. Nari stared at the dying star, thinking she could not design advanced machines or manipulate exotic matter like her classmates, but she could see the problem differently. She raised her hand. What if we don't try to stop the collapse? Dr. Shin looked interested. Explain. All the other solutions are trying to prevent or slow down what's happening naturally, Nari said. But what if we work with the collapse instead of against it? Use the energy that's already being released? She walked to the holographic display and pointed at the star with her finger, a primitive gesture that made some students laugh. The star is throwing off material as it dies. Instead of building one big machine to fight the collapse, what if we built lots of small collectors to catch what the star is already giving us? Dr. Shin's eyes brightened. Continue. Nari pulled out her notebook and began sketching. Her drawings were simple compared to the floating holographic designs around her, but they showed a network of small satellites orbiting the dying star, collecting the material it naturally ejected. The energy cost would be much lower, she explained, and if some collectors are destroyed, the others keep working. It's like fishing instead of trying to hold back the ocean. The classroom was quiet. Dr. Shin studied Nari's simple drawings for a long moment. Class dismissed. Dr. Shin said suddenly, Miss Nari, please remain behind. When the other students had left, Dr. Shin sat across from Nari. Where did that idea come from? She asked. I don't know, Nari admitted. I just looked at the problem and thought about what seemed easiest instead of what seemed most impressive. Dr. Shin smiled. In 300 years of teaching, I have seen thousands of brilliant solutions to that problem. All of them were variations on the same approach. Use advanced technology to impose control over natural processes. She gestured to Nari's notebook. Your solution is the first I have seen that works with the natural process instead of against it. It is not just functional, it is elegant. Nari felt a warmth spread through her chest. It was the first praise she had received all day. Do not let the other classes discourage you, Dr. Shin said gently. You think differently than we do. Sometimes that difference is exactly what we need. As Nari walked back to her dormitory, she thought about Dr. Shin's words. Her classmates could solve problems faster and more efficiently than she could. They had abilities she would never possess. But maybe, just maybe, her human way of thinking about problems could offer something valuable too. She found Kale in their room, arranging glowing crystals on his desk in complex patterns. How were your classes? He asked without looking up. Difficult, Nari admitted. I'm much slower than everyone else. Kale's skin shifted to a thoughtful purple. Slower, perhaps. But Dr. Shin sent a message to all the engineering faculty about your stellar harvesting design. She called it revolutionary. Nari felt her heart skip. Really? Really, Kale said, finally looking at her. Perhaps there is more to human thinking than we assumed. That night, Nari lay in bed looking out at the stars. She was still the slowest student in her classes, still struggling with technology that others found simple. But for the first time since arriving, she felt like maybe she belonged here after all. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight she allowed herself to hope that being different might actually be her greatest strength. 3 months had passed since Nari arrived at the Galactic Scholastic Institute. She had found her rhythm in classes, even if she was still the slowest student in most subjects. Her simple approaches to complex problems had earned respect from some professors, though others still treated her like an interesting pet that could do clever tricks. Today was different. Today was the diplomatic history exam, and Nari had spent weeks studying the official galactic textbook. She knew every chapter by memory, every important date and treaty. She was actually confident about this test. Professor Vextar, a tall being with silver skin and no visible mouth, handed out the exam materials. The questions appeared as holographic text floating in front of each student. Nari read through them carefully, answering each one based on what she had learned from the textbook. Then she reached question 15. Describe the first contact protocols between Earth and the Galactic Federation. Explain why human aggression required civilizing intervention. Nari stared at the question. Her hands began to shake. The textbook claimed that humans had attacked Federation ships during first contact. It said humans were naturally violent and had to be taught proper behavior through force. But Nari knew this was wrong. She had studied Earth's historical records before coming to the Institute. Humans had been peaceful during first contact. The Federation ships had attacked human colonies without warning. She looked around the exam room. Her classmates were answering the questions quickly, their faces showing no concern. They believed what the textbook said because they had no reason to doubt it. Nari stared at question 15 for a long time. She could write what the textbook said and pass the exam, or she could write the truth and face whatever consequences came. She began writing the real history of first contact. 2 days later, Professor Vextar called her to his office. The room was decorated with artifacts from dozens of different worlds. Ancient weapons, beautiful artwork, and strange devices filled every shelf. Nari, Professor Vextar said, his voice coming from somewhere inside his head since he had no mouth. We need to discuss your exam. Yes, sir, Nari said, trying to keep her voice steady. Your answer to question 15 is why problematic. You claim that Federation forces initiated hostilities during first contact with Earth. This contradicts official galactic history. It contradicts the textbook, Nari said carefully, but it matches Earth's historical records. Professor Vextar's silver skin darkened. Are you suggesting that official galactic records are incorrect? I'm suggesting that maybe there are different versions of what happened. Maybe the truth is more complicated than what's in our textbook. The professor was quiet for a long moment. Nari, you are a guest here. The Federation allowed your species to attend this institution as an act of generosity. Questioning official history could be seen as ungrateful. I'm grateful to be here, Nari said, but I can't write things I know are false. Knowledge is perspective, Professor Vextar replied. What humans call truth might simply be limited understanding. Advanced civilizations see the larger picture. Nari felt anger rising in her chest. So humans are too primitive to understand our own history? Perhaps, the professor said simply. That afternoon, Nari sat in the cafeteria with her lunch untouched. Word about her exam had spread quickly. Students whispered as she passed. Some looked angry. Others seemed afraid of her. Juwan, an android student from the Efficiency Collective, sat down across from her. His metal face could not show expressions, but his voice sounded concerned. Nari, you need to be careful, he said. Challenging official history is dangerous. The history is wrong, Nari said. Maybe it is. Maybe it is not. But fighting it will not help you or your species. Sujin, a blue-skinned Aquarian with large, gentle eyes, joined them at the table. Unlike most students, she actually seemed to like Nari. I can sense your emotions, she said softly. You are not lying about this. You really believe the textbook is wrong? I know it's wrong, Nari said. I've seen the real records. But why would the Federation lie? Sujin asked. I don't know. Maybe they made mistakes and don't want to admit it. Maybe they wanted to make humans look bad so other species wouldn't trust us. Juwan's electronic eyes flickered. That is a serious accusation. It's not an accusation. It's just a possibility. More students gathered around their table. Teho, the crystal-skinned student who had become something like a friend, looked worried. Nari, there are rumors that Dean Kang wants to expel you. For telling the truth? For causing diplomatic problems, Teho said. The Hegemony Council is sending an ambassador to investigate your claims. They think you are spreading human propaganda. Nari felt cold fear in her stomach. I just answered an exam question honestly. Honesty can be dangerous, said Minnie, a telepathic student who rarely spoke to anyone. Her large eyes glowed slightly as she looked at Nari. I can read surface thoughts. Many faculty members are afraid of you now. Afraid of me? Why? Because you will not accept what you are told. You question authority. This makes them uncomfortable. That evening, Nari sat in her room trying to study, but she could not concentrate. Kale was arranging his belongings, preparing to move to a different room. The administration had suggested that he might be more comfortable with a different roommate. I am sorry, Kyle said, his skin shifting through several shades of blue. I do not agree with their decision, but I must follow orders. I understand, Nari said, though it hurt to lose her roommate. For what it is worth, Kale said quietly. I have been researching Earth's historical records since you mentioned them. Your version of First Contact matches documents I found in the Galactic Archives. Nari looked up. Really? Really? The documents are classified, but I have clearance for my advanced history studies. The official textbook appears to be simplified. Simplified. The truth was changed to avoid embarrassing the Federation. But the real records still exist. Before Nari could respond, her door chimed. Dean Kang entered without waiting for permission. He was a tall, thin humanoid with pale gray skin and cold black eyes. Miss Nari, he said formally, please come with me. Dean Kang led her through corridors she had never seen before, deeper into the administrative section of the school. They passed through several security checkpoints where guards scanned her with devices that made her skin tingle. Finally, they entered a large office where a massive alien waited. The creature looked like a cross between a bear and an octopus, with thick fur and 8 powerful arms. This had to be Ambassador Zethmar from the Hegemony. So this is the human troublemaker, Ambassador Zethmar said in a voice like distant thunder. Ambassador, Dean Kang said nervously, may I present Nari Kim, our human exchange student. Sit, the ambassador commanded. Nari sat in a chair that adjusted itself to her size. Ambassador Zethmar studied her with 4 black eyes. You have made serious claims about Federation history, he said, claims that could damage relationships between member species. I just wrote what I knew to be true, Nari said. Truth is a luxury that diplomacy cannot always afford, the ambassador replied. Sometimes harmony is more important than accuracy. You want me to lie? I want you to understand your position. You are one human among billions of galactic citizens. Your perspective is code-limited. Dean Kang cleared his throat. Nari, the ambassador has a proposal that could resolve this situation peacefully. Ambassador Zethmar studied her with his 4 eyes. You realize this could take months? The political implications could be enormous? Yes, sir. And you are willing to stake your future and your species' future on this investigation? Yes, sir. The ambassador was quiet for a long time. Finally, one of his arms gestured in what might have been respect. Very well, human. You have courage, if not wisdom. The review will proceed. As Nari left the office, she felt both relief and terror. She had chosen truth over safety, but the consequences were still unknown. The galaxy would now judge not just her claims, but her character, and the character of her entire species. She only hoped she had made the right choice. 2 weeks after the historical review began, the entire school buzzed with excitement about the annual Innovation Challenge. Nari had heard students talking about it since her first day, but she had been too focused on keeping up with her regular classes to pay much attention. Now, as she sat in the massive auditorium watching Dean Kang address the assembled students, she realized this was the most important event of the school year. The Innovation Challenge represents the pinnacle of galactic education, Dean Kang announced to the crowd of alien students. This year's problem has stumped the greatest minds in the galaxy for decades. A holographic display appeared above the auditorium, showing complex diagrams of spaceships, energy readings, and mathematical equations that hurt Nari's head to look at. Faster-than-light travel is failing, Dean Kang continued. The energy-matter conversion systems that power our ships are becoming unstable. If we cannot solve this problem, interstellar civilization will collapse within 50 years. Nari felt a chill. She had not known that galactic civilization was in danger. Teams of 4 students will have 1 month to develop a solution. The winning team will have their design implemented across the galaxy. More importantly, they will have saved our way of life. After the presentation, students gathered in groups, forming teams with their friends or choosing partners based on complementary abilities. Nari stood alone, watching the excited conversations around her. "Nari," called a familiar voice. Hyunwoo, a mathematical genius from the calculator species, approached her with 2 other students. "Would you like to join our team?" Nari looked at the group in surprise. Hyunwoo could solve equations with trillion variables in his head. Taeyun, a shaper from the matter manipulation species, could build complex machines just by thinking about them. Chanho, a temporal student, could see multiple possible futures at once. "Why would you want me?" Nari asked honestly. "You're all brilliant. I'm the slowest student in school." "Maybe that's exactly what we need," Doan said, her silvery skin shifting color slightly. "Everyone else thinks the same way. You think differently." "Besides," Chanho added, his 3 eyes blinking in sequence, "in the probability streams I can see, teams with humans have interesting outcomes." "Interesting good or interesting bad?" Nari asked. "Just interesting," Chanho replied with what might have been a smile. Their team was assigned a workspace in the Innovation Laboratory, a massive room filled with holographic projectors, matter synthesizers, and computing systems that could simulate entire star systems. Nari felt overwhelmed just looking at the equipment. For the first week, her teammates worked on conventional solutions. Hyunwoo calculated new mathematical approaches to energy conversion. Taeyun designed machines that could manipulate exotic matter more efficiently. Chanho explored timeline scenarios where different technologies might work. Each solution was incredibly advanced. Any one of them would have revolutionized space travel on Earth. But when they tested their designs in the simulation systems, each one failed in the same way. They required too much energy to be practical on a galactic scale. "We need more power," Hyunwoo said, his elongated head glowing slightly as he processed millions of calculations. "Every solution requires more energy than we can generate. What if we use dark matter?" Daeun suggested. "Or create artificial pocket dimensions to store energy." "I have run those scenarios," Chanho said, his middle eye focusing on probability streams only he could see. "They work in theory but fail when scaled up to galactic implementation." Nari sat quietly, listening to her teammates discuss technologies she barely understood. She had spent the week trying to learn basic concepts while they worked on solutions that were beyond anything she could imagine. "What if we're thinking about this wrong?" she said suddenly. Her teammates turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" Taeyun asked. "Well," Nari said slowly, "all our solutions are trying to make faster-than-light travel work better. But what if the problem isn't with the technology? What if the problem is that we need faster-than-light travel at all?" Hyunwoo's head dimmed as he stopped calculating. "I do not understand." Nari stood up and walked to the holographic display showing the galaxy. "Look at this. Billions of ships traveling between millions of worlds every day. Each trip uses enormous amounts of energy. What if there was a way to reduce the number of trips needed?" "Reduce travel?" Chanho seemed confused. "But galactic civilization depends on travel. Trade, communication, cultural exchange." "I'm not saying stop travel," Nari said. "I'm saying make it more efficient, like carpooling instead of everyone driving their own car." Her teammates stared at her blankly. Nari realized they had no idea what carpooling meant. On Earth, if many people need to go to the same place, sometimes they share one vehicle, instead of each taking their own. It uses less fuel and costs less money. "But we do have mass transit systems," Daeun said. "Large ships that carry many passengers." "Yes, but what about cargo? What about all the small trips? What if instead of sending one ship to carry supplies to each colony, we created supply networks, stations positioned between worlds where ships could stop and refuel, share cargo, coordinate routes?" Hyunwoo's head began glowing again as he started calculating. Mathematically, it could reduce total energy consumption by... This is interesting. The savings compound exponentially with network size. And what if we didn't need to send ships at all for some things? Nari continued, getting excited. What about transmitting information instead of carrying it? Sending blueprints for things and building them locally instead of shipping finished products across the galaxy? Chanho's 3 eyes widened. In the probability streams, this approach shows remarkable success rates. but it would require completely changing how galactic civilization operates. Maybe that's what we need, Nari said. Maybe we've been trying to fix the symptoms instead of the disease. Da-un began shaping a holographic model with her hands. Show us what you mean. Nari pulled out her notebook, the same primitive paper notebook that had embarrassed her in so many classes. She began sketching a network of connected stations, drawing lines between worlds to show efficient travel routes. Instead of every ship going directly from point A to point B, they follow networks. Like rivers flowing into larger rivers, ships gather cargo and passengers along routes, making fewer total trips necessary. She drew more diagrams showing local manufacturing centers. Instead of one world making something and shipping it everywhere, multiple worlds make the same thing for their local regions. Reduce the distance things need to travel. Hyunwoo paused his calculations. This is not a technological solution. This is a social solution. Sometimes the best technology is not building something new, Nari said. Sometimes it's organizing what you already have in a better way. For the next 2 weeks, the team worked on developing Nari's network approach. Her teammates used their advanced abilities to model how the system would work, calculate energy savings, and design the infrastructure needed. But the core ideas came from Nari's notebook, simple drawings of connected networks, basic concepts about efficiency and resource sharing, primitive sketches that showed how to reorganize galactic civilization to use less energy instead of generating more power. I still do not understand how you thought of this, Da-Yoon said as they prepared their final presentation. Every other team is focused on improving faster-than-light technology. Maybe because I don't understand faster-than-light technology, Nari admitted. I had to think about the problem in terms I could understand. Efficiency, organization, working together. Human concepts, Hyunwoo observed. I guess so. The day of the final presentations arrived. 20 teams presented their solutions to a panel of judges that included some of the greatest minds in the galaxy. Most solutions involved incredible technological advances, new forms of exotic matter, revolutionary energy sources, machines that could manipulate the fabric of space itself. When Nari's team took the stage, she felt tiny under the gaze of thousands of alien students and faculty members. The judges included beings whose species had been exploring space since before Earth existed. Hyunwoo presented the mathematical models. Taehyun demonstrated the infrastructure designs. Chanho showed probability projections for implementation success. Then Nari stepped forward with her notebook. The problem is not that we don't have enough energy, she said, her voice carrying across the silent auditorium. The problem is that we waste the energy we have. She opened her notebook and held up her simple drawings. These are network diagrams. They show how to organize galactic transportation like a circulatory system instead of random individual trips. The judges leaned forward, studying her primitive sketches. The solution is not better technology, Nari continued. It's better organization. Instead of every world trying to be independent, we create interdependent networks that share resources efficiently. She explained how local manufacturing could reduce shipping needs, how coordinated travel routes could carry more cargo with fewer trips, how information networks could eliminate the need for physical transport in many cases. Advanced civilizations have forgotten something that primitive civilizations know by necessity, she concluded. Sometimes the smartest solution is also the simplest one. The auditorium was completely silent when she finished. Dr. Vorthak, the lead judge and one of the galaxy's greatest engineers, stood up slowly. His crystalline body reflected rainbow colors as he moved. In 800 years of innovation challenges, he said, every winning solution has involved creating new technology. This is the first proposal that solves the problem by using existing technology more wisely. He gestured to Nari's notebook. These simple drawings represent a paradigm shift that could save galactic civilization without building a single new machine. The other judges nodded in agreement. Judge Veltara, an ancient being of pure energy, pulsed brightly. The human has shown us that innovation is not always about advancement. Sometimes it is about wisdom. When the winners were announced, Nari could barely hear her team's name over the sound of her own heartbeat. They had won. Her simple drawings and basic ideas had defeated the most advanced technological solutions in the galaxy. As her teammates celebrated around her, Nari realized something important. She was still the slowest student in school, She still struggled with advanced mathematics and alien technology, but she had something that even the most brilliant minds sometimes lacked: a different way of looking at problems. Maybe being primitive was not always a disadvantage. Maybe sometimes the galaxy needed someone who thought like a human. The week after winning the Innovation Challenge should have been the happiest of Nari's time at the Institute. Her solution was being discussed by engineers across the galaxy. Scientists were calling her network design revolutionary. For the first time since arriving, she felt like she truly belonged. Then Professor Lee appeared at her door. Nari had barely noticed Professor Lee during her months at school. He taught advanced cultural studies, a class she was not enrolled in. He was a quiet, unremarkable humanoid with gray skin and forgettable features, the kind of person who seemed to blend into the background. "Nari Kim," he said politely. "May I come in?" Nari was alone in her room. Kale had moved out months ago during the history controversy, and she had not been assigned a new roommate. "Of course," she said, stepping aside. Professor Lee entered and carefully closed the door behind him. He touched something on his wrist, and Nari heard a faint humming sound fill the room. "Privacy field," he explained. "What I am about to tell you cannot be overheard." Nari felt cold fear creep up her spine. "What's wrong?" Professor Lee sat down across from her, and his unremarkable face became suddenly serious. "My name is not really Professor Lee. I am Agent Corthan of the Galactic Intelligence Collective. I have been watching you since the day you arrived." "Watching me?" Nari's voice came out as a whisper. "Your admission to this school was not random, Nari. It was not even really based on your academic abilities. You were brought here as part of an experiment." Nari felt the room spinning around her. "What kind of experiment?" Agent Corthan pulled out a small device that projected holographic documents into the air between them. 47 years ago, the Galactic Council identified humanity as a potential threat to galactic stability. A threat? But we had barely discovered faster than light travel. Exactly. Most species develop advanced technology gradually over thousands of years. They evolve socially alongside their technology, becoming more predictable, more controllable. Humans developed too quickly. The holographic documents showed images of human colonies, Earth's military forces, and reports from various alien intelligence agencies. When the Federation first encountered humans, they expected another primitive species that would take centuries to become relevant. Instead, humans adapted to galactic technology almost immediately. Worse, you began modifying our technology in ways we had never considered. Nari remembered her early classes, how her simple approaches had surprised her professors. "You were afraid of how we think differently." "We were afraid of unpredictability," Agent Corthan corrected. "Galactic civilization has been stable for over 3,000 years, because advanced species think in similar patterns. We can predict each other's actions, prevent conflicts, maintain order. But humans think differently, dangerously differently. Your species solves problems in ways we cannot predict. You make decisions based on principles rather than efficiency. You value individual choice over collective harmony." Agent Corthan gestured, and the holographic documents changed, showing surveillance reports with Nari's name and photo. "So you decided to study us. We decided to study you specifically. You were selected from thousands of human applicants because your psychological profile showed maximum human characteristics: stubbornness, creativity, ethical inflexibility, innovative thinking." Nari felt sick. "I was never here to learn. I was here to be a lab rat. Your education was real. But yes, everything you did was monitored, analyzed, and reported to intelligence agencies across the galaxy. Every solution you created, every stand you took, every choice you made was studied as an example of how humans might behave on a larger scale." The history controversy? We created that situation to test human loyalty versus human honesty. Most species would choose loyalty to authority over abstract truth. You chose truth, confirming our fears about human unpredictability. The Innovation Challenge? We expected you to fail spectacularly, proving that human thinking was inferior to advanced methods. Instead, you solved a problem that had stumped us for decades. That was not in our projections. Nari stood up and began pacing around her small room. "So what happens now? You've studied me for months. What did you learn?" Agent Corthan was quiet for a moment. "We learned that our fears were justified. Humans are indeed dangerous to the established order. Your way of thinking could disrupt the careful balance that maintains galactic peace. So you're going to stop us? Ban humans from space?" The council is divided. Some want to contain humanity on Earth permanently. Others want to integrate you slowly under careful supervision. A few believe humans should be eliminated entirely. Nari stopped pacing and stared at him. Eliminated? Not killed. Culturally eliminated. Change human education, human values, human thinking patterns until you become more like other galactic species. More predictable. More controllable. Turn us into something we're not. Turn you into something safer. Nari felt anger burning in her chest. And what do you want, Agent Corthon? I want to offer you a choice. You can accept a position as Earth's official representative to the Galactic Council. You would have a comfortable life, significant influence, and the ability to guide human-galactic relations. In exchange, you would follow Council guidance on all major decisions. Become a puppet. Become a bridge between two very different ways of thinking. And if I refuse, then you will be quietly expelled from the Institute. Earth will be told that humans are not ready for galactic education. Your species will be blacklisted from galactic institutions for at least 50 years, while we determine how to handle the human problem. Nari sat down heavily on her bed. Everything she had accomplished, every friendship she had made, every moment of belonging she had felt, it was all part of someone else's plan. How long do I have to decide? 3 days. After Agent Corthon left, Nari sat alone in her room for hours. She felt betrayed, angry, and completely lost. Everyone she trusted might be part of the conspiracy. Every success might have been allowed to happen for research purposes. A soft knock at her door interrupted her dark thoughts. Su Jin, the empathetic Aquarian, entered without waiting for permission. I felt your emotional distress from the other side of the building, Su Jin said gently. What happened? Nari looked at her friend's concerned face. Could she trust anyone? I learned something terrible, Nari said carefully. Su Jin sat beside her on the bed. I can sense deception in others. You have never lied to me, Nari. Whatever you learned, you can tell me. So Nari told her everything, about Agent Corthon's real identity, about the experiment, about the choice she faced. Su Jin listened without interrupting, her large eyes growing wider with each revelation. I have suspected something like this, Su Jin said when Nari finished. The emotional signatures around you have always been strange. Too much observation, too much analysis. Faculty members who should not care about you have been deeply interested in your progress. So you believe me? I believe you. And I think you are not the only one who has been deceived. The next morning, Su Jin brought more friends to Nari's room. Taeho arrived first, his crystal skin shifting through worried colors. Su Jin told me what happened. I have been analyzing statistical patterns in your experiences here. The probability of so many coincidental challenges is essentially zero. Ju-1 the android came next. I have been monitoring data flows around the school. There has been unusual intelligence traffic related to human behavioral analysis. The patterns support your story. Even Kale appeared looking guilty and ashamed. I have news that will not make you feel better, he said, his 6 arms hanging dejectedly. I was instructed to monitor you and report on your behavior. I thought it was normal academic oversight. I did not realize it was espionage. You were spying on me? Nari felt a fresh wave of betrayal. I was told it was for your protection, to help you adapt to galactic culture. I stopped reporting months ago when I realized the questions they asked were not about helping you. What kinds of questions? How you made decisions, whether you could be influenced by peer pressure, how you reacted to authority, whether human loyalty could be purchased or if it had to be earned. Hyunwoo and Da-eun from her Innovation Challenge team arrived together. We suspected something when our solution was immediately classified at the highest levels, Da-eun said. Innovation Challenge winners usually receive public recognition. Our design was buried in secret research projects. They are studying your network design to understand human organizational thinking, Hyunwoo added. Not to implement it, but to predict how humans might reorganize galactic society if given the chance. Nari looked around at her friends, the people she had thought were simply classmates but who had become something like family. So everyone was either spying on me or being used to study me. We were all being used, Taeho said, but that does not mean our friendships are false. I chose to care about you. That choice was mine, not part of anyone's experiment. We all made that choice, Su-jin agreed. Whatever brought us together, what we built together is real. So what do we do now? Nari asked. Ju-Won's electronic eyes flickered. We have 3 days to find a better option than the 2 Agent Korthan offered you. We could expose the conspiracy, Da-Un suggested. With what proof? Kyle asked. Agent Korthan could simply deny everything. Who would believe a group of students over galactic intelligence agencies? We need to be smarter than that, Tejo said. We need to turn their own methods against them. What do you mean? Nari asked. They have been studying you to understand human thinking, but you have been studying them too, learning how galactic civilization works. Maybe it is time to show them what humans can really do when we work together. Chan Ho, who had been quiet until now, suddenly spoke. In the probability streams, I see a path where this situation becomes an opportunity rather than a threat. But it requires perfect timing and absolute trust between all of us. What kind of opportunity? Nari asked. The kind where one human changes how an entire galaxy thinks about cooperation, trust, and the value of different perspectives. Nari looked around at her friends. Each of them was risking their own future by helping her. Each had chosen to stand with her despite the possible consequences. Tell me what you see, she said to Chan Ho. I see you doing what humans do best, Chan Ho replied. Finding a third option when everyone else thinks there are only 2 choices. For the first time since Agent Korthan's visit, Nari smiled. Then let's get to work. Nari and her friends worked through the night planning something that had never been attempted in galactic history. They would not just expose the conspiracy, they would use it to demonstrate exactly why human thinking was valuable rather than dangerous. The key is presentation, Tejo said, his crystal skin glowing with concentration as he calculated probability matrices. We need to show the Galactic Council that they have been asking the wrong question. What do you mean? Nari asked. They have been asking whether humans are dangerous to galactic stability, but the real question is whether galactic stability is worth preserving, if it requires fear and deception. Sujin nodded, her empathetic abilities picking up the emotional undercurrents of their planning. You need to make them feel what you feel. The pain of being deceived, but also the hope of something better. For 2 days they gathered evidence. Ju-Won used his android access codes to retrieve classified documents. Kel provided his surveillance reports and the questions he had been asked to answer. Hyunwoo calculated the true costs of the intelligence, operation, resources that could have been used to solve galactic problems. Instead of creating new ones, Dayun shaped holographic models showing how the conspiracy had affected not just Nari, but hundreds of other students who had been unknowingly involved in the experiment. Chan Ho mapped probability streams, showing how different choices could lead to different futures for both humans and galactic civilization. On the morning of the 3rd day, Agent Korthan returned to hear Nari's decision. He found her waiting in the same classroom where she had first struggled with alien mathematics months ago. Have you made your choice? He asked. Yes, Nari said, but not the choice you expected. Agent Korthan frowned as other figures entered the room. Dean Kang arrived first, looking confused about why he had been summoned. Professor Yun followed, then Dr. Shin from Stellar Engineering. More faculty members arrived, then students until the classroom was filled with representatives from dozens of species. What is this? Agent Korthan demanded. This is something new, Nari said. Instead of choosing between your 2 options, I'm creating a 3rd one. She stood in front of the assembled crowd, her heart pounding but her voice steady. For months you have been studying me to determine whether humans are dangerous to galactic civilization. Today I want to present my findings from studying you. Agent Korthan stepped forward. You have no authority to tell the truth, Nari interrupted. To share what I have learned? I thought advanced civilizations valued knowledge. She gestured and Ju-Won activated the holographic displays they had prepared. Documents, recordings, and data analysis filled the air around them. The Galactic Intelligence Collective has spent enormous resources trying to determine whether human thinking poses a threat to established order. But they never asked whether the established order is actually working. The evidence showed the true scope of the surveillance operation. Not just Nari, but dozens of other students from emerging species had been monitored, manipulated, and studied without their knowledge. You were so afraid of unpredictability that you created an entire system based on deception and control. You were so worried about disruption that you forgot to ask whether some things should be disrupted. Dean Kang looked shocked as he saw the extent of the intelligence operation within his own school. You conducted espionage in my institution without my knowledge. The safety of galactic civilization required, Agent Corthan began. The safety of galactic civilization, Nari said, should not require lying to students, manipulating their experiences, and treating them like laboratory animals. She walked to the center of the room, surrounded by the holographic evidence. But I'm not here to accuse anyone. I'm here to propose a solution that serves everyone's interests. The room fell silent. Even Agent Corthan stopped talking. You want to know how humans think? Let me show you. We don't just solve technical problems. We solve social problems. We find ways for different groups to work together instead of fighting or controlling each other. She gestured to her friends around the room. Look at what happened here. Students from a dozen different species chose to help me, not because they were programmed to, not because they were following orders, but because they believed it was right. Friendship is not a basis for galactic policy, Agent Corthan said dismissively. Isn't it? Nari asked. What is diplomacy except friendship between governments? What is trade except friendship between economies? What is peace except friendship between species?
She activated another display showing her innovation challenge solution.
When I solved the energy crisis, I didn't create new technology. I found a way for existing systems to work together more efficiently. That's what humans do. We build connections. Professor Yun stepped forward. What exactly are you proposing? I propose that instead of studying humans in secret to control us, you work with us openly to learn from each other. Create real exchange programs where species share knowledge freely. Build institutions based on cooperation instead of surveillance. And in return, Agent Corthan asked suspiciously, in return you get access to human innovation, human problem-solving, and human approaches to cooperation. But more importantly, you get to build a galactic civilization based on trust instead of fear. Tejo stepped forward, his skin shifting to supportive blue colors. Nari's methods have already solved problems that stumped our greatest minds. Imagine what we could accomplish if all species shared knowledge freely. The risks, Agent Corthan started, are smaller than the risks of continued deception, Sujin interrupted. I can sense the emotional damage this conspiracy has caused. Fear breeds more fear. Trust breeds innovation. Dayun shaped a holographic model showing galactic civilization reorganized around cooperation instead of control. Nari has shown us that different thinking patterns make us stronger, not weaker. Diversity of thought leads to better solutions. Chanho added his probability analysis. The futures where species work together openly are consistently more successful than futures based on surveillance and control. Even Kale spoke up, his 6 arms gesturing expressively. I have worked with Nari for months. Human stubbornness is not dangerous, it is principled. Human unpredictability is not chaotic, it is creative. Dean Kang looked around the room at the assembled evidence and testimonies. You're proposing to completely restructure how galactic institutions operate. I'm proposing that we evolve, Nari said. Every species in this room has evolved biologically to survive in their environment. Maybe it's time for galactic civilization to evolve socially to thrive in a diverse universe. The Council will never approve such radical changes, Agent Corthan said. Maybe they will if you present it correctly, Nari replied. Don't tell them you failed to control humans. Tell them you discovered a better way to work with humans. She pulled out her notebook, the same primitive paper notebook that had carried her through every challenge she had faced. Human solutions look simple on the surface, but they solve complex problems. This proposal looks simple too. Replace fear with trust, replace control with cooperation. But implementing it would require changing fundamental aspects of galactic governance, Dean Kang observed. Yes, Nari agreed. It would require courage. It would require admitting that the current system isn't perfect. It would require trusting that working together produces better results than working against each other. She looked directly at Agent Corthan. You spent months studying whether humans are dangerous. Let me ask you a different question. Are you brave enough to find out what we could accomplish together? The room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Professor Yun spoke. I have spent my career studying different civilizations. Nari is right. Our current approach has prevented conflicts, but it has also prevented growth. We have achieved stability by limiting potential. Dr. Shin nodded. The innovation challenge proved that different perspectives produce better solutions. Perhaps it is time to apply that lesson to governance as well. One by one, faculty members and students voiced support for Nari's proposal. Not everyone agreed, but enough did to create momentum for change. Agent Corthan looked around the room, seeing decades of careful control slipping away. "This is not what I was sent here to accomplish." "No," Nari said gently. "You were sent here to determine whether humans could be controlled. Instead, you discovered whether galactic civilization could be improved. The Council will want guarantees, assurances that this cooperation will not lead to chaos." "I can't guarantee that," Nari admitted, "but I can promise that trying to control others will definitely lead to problems. Fear always creates the very dangers it tries to prevent. What you're proposing is essentially an experiment with galactic civilization itself." "Yes," Nari said with a smile, "and humans are very good at experiments." Agent Corthan was quiet for a long time. Finally, he deactivated his recording devices and looked at Nari with something that might have been respect. "I will present your proposal to the Council, but I make no promises about their response." "That's all I ask," Nari said. "The chance to show that trust works better than fear." As the crowd dispersed, Nari's friends gathered around her. They had done something unprecedented, turned a conspiracy designed to limit human influence into an opportunity to reshape galactic civilization. "Do you think it will work?" Sujin asked. "I don't know," Nari replied honestly. "But at least now the galaxy will get to choose its future instead of having it chosen for them." "Very human," Kyle observed, his skin shifting through proud colors. "Very human," Nari agreed. 6 weeks later, Nari stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council, watching representatives from 200 worlds debate the future of interstellar civilization. The massive chamber stretched beyond what human eyes could easily comprehend, with gravity wells and atmospheric zones allowing species of all types to participate comfortably. The debate had been going on for days. Some representatives supported Nari's proposal for open cooperation between species. Others demanded a return to the traditional system of careful control and limited interaction. A few suggested compromise positions that satisfied no one. "The human experiment has proven our concerns valid," declared Representative Vortex from the Supremacy Coalition. His mechanical body gleamed under the chamber's lights as he gestured with 4 articulated arms. "Unpredictable thinking leads to unpredictable consequences. Order requires predictability. Order without growth is stagnation," replied Ambassador Talana from the Progressive Alliance. Her flowing energy form shifted colors as she spoke. "The human solutions have already saved us from the faster-than-light crisis. Perhaps unpredictability is exactly what we need." Nari sat in the observation section with her friends from the Institute. Kale's skin shifted through nervous colors. Sujin radiated calm emotions to help everyone stay focused. Teho calculated probability matrices while Juwan monitored data streams for signs of how the vote might go. "This is taking forever," Da-Un whispered, her silvery form barely containing her impatience. "Democracy is slow," Chanho observed. "But in the probability streams, slow decisions tend to be more stable than fast ones." Agent Corthan, now openly identified as such, had presented the Council with 2 reports. His original analysis classified humans as a potential threat requiring careful management. His revised analysis suggested that human cooperation could benefit galactic civilization more than human control could protect it. "The question before us," announced Prime Coordinator Zethmos, an ancient being whose species had founded the original Galactic Council, "is whether we will evolve our methods of governance or maintain our traditional approaches." "Evolution implies survival advantage," said Representative Kexthul from the Logic Collective. "Traditional approaches have maintained peace for 3 millennia. The human approach is untested at galactic scale." "The human approach has been tested," corrected Dr. Shin, who had been invited to testify as an expert witness. "For 9 months, students from dozens of species worked together openly at the Institute. The results included breakthrough innovations and stronger interspecies relationships. A school is not a galaxy," Representative Vortex countered. "But a galaxy is made up of individuals," Nari said, rising from her seat in the observation area. The entire chamber turned to look at her. She had not been scheduled to speak again, but Prime Coordinator Zethmos gestured for her to continue. "Representatives, you have been debating whether my species can be trusted with galactic cooperation. But trust is not something that can be given or taken. It can only be built through shared experience. She walked to the center of the chamber, feeling tiny among the massive alien representatives. 6 months ago, I was a confused human struggling to understand alien technology. Today, I have friends from a dozen species who chose to risk their futures to help me stand up for what we all believed was right. Individual friendships do not scale to civilizational policy, Representative Vortex said dismissively. Don't they? Nari asked. What is diplomacy but friendship between governments? What is trade but friendship between economies? What is the Galactic Council itself but an attempt to build friendship between species? She gestured to the assembled representatives. You already practice cooperation. You already share knowledge and resources. I'm simply proposing that you do it more openly and more effectively, with humans as full participants rather than subjects of study, added Ambassador Teliana. With all species as full participants, Nari corrected. The surveillance system you used on me was also used on dozens of other emerging species. Catharians, Zelations, Vorthani, all monitored and manipulated instead of welcomed and educated. Representative Morak from the Emerging Species Coalition stood up, all 4 meters of his insectoid form clicking with agitation. The human speaks truth. My people have also been subjects of study rather than partners in cooperation, as have mine, added Representative Yileth from the Aquarian depths. We were told this was normal diplomatic protocol. Perhaps, Prime Coordinator Zethmos said slowly. The question is not whether we can trust humans, but whether we can trust ourselves to build something better than what we have. The debate continued for another day. Nari listened to arguments about risk management, cultural preservation, technological security, and social stability. But gradually the focus shifted from whether change was dangerous to whether change was necessary. Finally, the vote was called. All representatives in favor of Resolution 847B, establishing the Open Cooperation Protocol, Prime Coordinator Zethmos announced. Lights appeared throughout the chamber as representatives registered their votes. Nari held her breath, watching the tally display. The resolution passed by a narrow margin. The motion carries, Prime Coordinator Zethmos declared. The Galactic Council hereby establishes the Open Cooperation Protocol, beginning with a 5-year trial period during which participating species will engage in unrestricted educational and technological exchange. The chamber erupted in sounds that Nari's translator converted as cheers, concerns, and neutral acknowledgments from dozens of different species. Furthermore, the Prime Coordinator continued, the Council appoints Nari Kim as the first IR, human galactic scholar, tasked with developing implementation protocols for the new system. Nari felt the floor spinning beneath her feet. This was not what she had expected. The position will involve traveling to different worlds, studying various educational and social systems, and developing methods for productive cultural exchange. You will spend part of each year on Earth, part at the Institute, and part visiting different member civilizations. After the session ended, Nari found herself surrounded by representatives wanting to discuss details of the new program. Some were excited about the possibilities. Others were clearly hoping to limit the scope of changes. All of them wanted to understand how human thinking might affect their own civilizations. This is bigger than we planned, Sujin said, as they finally escaped to a quiet corridor. Much bigger, Teho agreed. You are not just representing humans anymore. You are representing the concept of cooperation itself. I don't know if I'm ready for that responsibility, Nari admitted. None of us are ever ready for the responsibilities that matter most, Kale said, his skin shifting to encouraging colors. But you have already proven that you can handle them. Agent Korthon appeared in the corridor looking tired but oddly relieved. Congratulations, Scholar Nari. You have managed to completely reorganize my career. I hope that's a good thing. I am being reassigned from intelligence operations to diplomatic coordination. Apparently, the Council believes that someone who understands both surveillance and cooperation might be useful in implementing the new protocols. Will you help me? Nari asked. It appears I have little choice. But truthfully, I find the prospect more interesting than my previous work. 3 months later, Nari stood on the observation deck of a transport ship approaching Earth. Through the viewport, she could see her home planet growing larger, blue and green and beautiful, in a way that no alien world had quite matched. Her friends had gathered to see her off on this first trip home. Kale would be joining her, having requested assignment as her permanent research partner. Sujin had enrolled in the new emotional intelligence program that had been created based on Nari's emphasis on understanding feelings as well as facts. Hyunwoo, Da-yoon, and Chan-ho had become the core faculty of the Innovation Laboratory, teaching courses that combined advanced alien capabilities with human-style creative problem-solving. Professor Yoon had been promoted to head the new Department of Cognitive Diversity. Even Dr. Hexaval had changed his teaching methods, encouraging students to question assumptions rather than simply memorize established knowledge. "Earth looks smaller than I remembered," Nari said. "Perhaps you have grown larger," Kale suggested. "Or perhaps I finally understand how big the galaxy really is." As their ship entered Earth's atmosphere, Nari reflected on how much had changed since she first left home. She had departed as one confused teenager hoping to prove that humans belonged among the stars. She was returning as a bridge between civilizations, carrying responsibility for reshaping how different species understood each other. The landing pad was crowded with reporters, government officials, and her family. Her parents looked proud and overwhelmed as she stepped off the ship with her alien companion. "How does it feel to be home?" asked a reporter. "It feels like the beginning of something new," Nari replied. "Not just for me, but for everyone." Over the following weeks, she traveled across Earth, meeting with educators, scientists, and political leaders. She explained the new opportunities for interstellar cooperation and helped establish programs for human students to attend galactic institutions. Young humans lined up by the thousands to apply for their own journeys to alien schools. They would face the same challenges Nari had faced, but with better preparation and the knowledge that different thinking patterns were valued, not feared. "You started something that cannot be stopped," her father said as they walked through the park where she had played as a child. "I hope so," Nari replied. "The galaxy is big enough for everyone to contribute something valuable." 6 months. Later, Nari was aboard another ship, this time heading to the crystalline cities of the Shaper homeworld. Her mission was to study their educational methods and find ways to incorporate them into the new cooperative framework. She carried with her a collection of items that had become her signature tools: advanced alien technology for complex analysis, and a simple paper notebook for organizing her thoughts in ways that still surprised her galactic colleagues. As she worked in her cabin preparing for the challenges ahead, she smiled, thinking about how her journey had started. She had been one human among aliens, struggling to prove she belonged. Now she was one human among friends, working to prove that everyone belonged. The galaxy was still watching her decisions, but now with curiosity and hope instead of suspicion and fear. She had shown them that sometimes the most advanced civilizations needed to learn from those they considered primitive, and that true progress came not from technological superiority, but from the courage to think differently and the wisdom to value diversity. Her story had become their story. A galaxy learning that strength came not from uniformity, but from the beautiful complexity of different minds working together toward common goals. And it was only the beginning.